Okay, the name of our lesson today is dealing with the stress of caregiving, and it's part one because there are a number of things a lot of things that are involved in the stress of caregiving. But today we're going to be focusing in on two main ones. Um, I guess I want to start out by saying that, we all know caregiving's hard, and sometimes it's hard in ways that we wouldn't really have anticipated. You really get hit by the emotional, the physical, the financial impact. That's kind of stuff that you expect to have happen potentially, but sometimes it comes at you in big and small ways that can wear you down, and you don't always anticipate the kinds of things that might or might not happen. Um, and so, this certainly happened to me when I was taking care of my husband, John, who was diagnosed in 2007 with Lewy body dementia. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, it's a monster that where dementia married Parkinson's disease and created Lewy body dementia. And so you get parts of both of those awful diseases. And so there was just a lot that came at me and a lot that I learned during the 8.5 years from John's diagnosis going forward until he passed away in 2015. Uh, you have a tendency to think sometimes during the journey because some folks will let you down that you thought were going to show up. Some medical doctors, some medical providers are disappointing you. That these people maybe feel like enemies almost. You thought they were on the friend side, but they're hurting you now. They may feel like enemies, but they really aren't your enemy. You have other things that you're dealing with that you really can get some more control over. You can't control other people, but you can have control over yourself and your choices. And those things can have an impact on how your dementia journey goes. The people part of it, especially involving family, really was a part of the longest chapter of the book that I wrote called Treasures in the Darkness that my husband's neurologist asked me to write. When I was in John was in the early stage, and I was in the early stage of caregiving. And the longest chapter in that book is called Family Issues and Support. And I really do talk about really very specifically, I name names, even though I did mask one person at their request. And I want you to know that everybody who's in that book got a chance to read the book in advance. I didn't blindside them. But that chapter really does dig into family issues and support. How do you manage it when people don't show up, when people disappoint you, when people hurt you? And that's a chapter worth reading. So if you have a copy of that book, you may want to get it out and read that Family Issues and Support, or you may want to pick up a copy of Treasures in the Darkness by Pat Snyder, which you can find on Amazon. I think it's probably the most important chapter in terms of our heart and how we deal with things as we're caregiving. You have a lot of different things that are stressing you in this journey. And so what we're going to do, let's see if I can get my computer to work for me here. We're going to focus in on two of them today, the disease and stress. And the disease is really easy to identify as your enemy. And you're going to need to learn everything you possibly can about that disease. It's very important that you learn what kind of dementia your loved one has. You're not going to treat Lewy body disease, Lewy body dementia, which is also called Parkinson's disease dementia, if the movement symptoms happen first. You're not going to handle that one in the same way that you'd handle Alzheimer's, or the same way that you would handle maybe frontotemporal dementia or vascular dementia. Now, a lot of things are going to be the same, but there are going to be some things that are different. So knowing what kind of dementia you have is kind of a step one for you. And many doctors are going to say, well, it's just dementia. There's not much you can do about it. If you have a doctor saying that to you, I encourage you to find another doctor. Let that doctor go. You're coach of this team, which I'm going to be talking about in a minute. And coach gets to decide who plays. And a doctor who doesn't recognize that it's important to know what kind of dementia, a doctor who says there's nothing much you can do, so they don't give you any help in terms of medical intervention, that's a doctor you want to let drop off your team and go see if you can find someone else to help you. We'll help you with that process. If you get in touch with us, we'll see if we can help you find somebody who will help you more in your community. But the best available treatments that are out there are very important for you to try to find out, and don't accept that nothing really works. There are some kinds of dementia that that they're not as much that you can do. Frontotemporal dementia is they haven't really found anything directly interfere with the process of that disease. But even with that disease, you can still have some medications that will help with the symptoms. So do find out, do dig into that and see if you can find out about what the available treatments are. It's very important. And by the way, those of you who are dealing with Lewy body dementia, if you haven't already heard me say this, Dr. Daniel Kaufer, who was a member of the Lewy Body Dementia Association Scientific Advisory Council, told me that I could share with all of you that Lewy body dementia is among the most challenging of all the dementias to treat, but it is the most responsive of all the dementias to the proper management. And so don't accept, oh, that's the worst one you could have. Oh, yeah, that's awful. There's really not anything we can do. That's not true. That's not what the best providers for Lewy body dementia know to be the truth. So keep looking for a doctor who is going to either know about that, or a doctor who's humble enough and willing to learn about it, or as you learn about it, be willing to listen to you and you share information with them. And that goes also for the primary care provider. A lot of times, I know John's primary care provider depended on me a lot. She said, I know you're researching, I know you're connected with Dr. Kaufer. And she would say, what do you think would be the best way to do this? Or what does Dr. Kaufer think would be the best? And you want a doctor who's going to work with you as a team member. Okay, scheduling medication is also important. Sometimes if you change treatment from giving it in the morning to giving it in the evening, or switching it from morning to evening, you may get the better impact of that medication on your loved one's symptoms. So looking at the scheduling can be an important part of learning about this disease and having an easier journey with the disease. Very important to know what medications to avoid. Those of you who are dealing with Lewy body dementia, you know this is a major issue. The anticholinergics, the benzodiazepines, the medicines that are taken for various kinds of psychosis, the psychiatric medications, those have to be selected and managed very, very carefully. Some of them you want to completely avoid. Some of them, many of them you want to be cautious about, but maybe use them in a small amount. This is where you need to have conversations with your physician and listen to what the physician is saying, and let the physician know what you are learning about these various things. And it needs to be sometimes a give and take situation depending on who that physician is. And just be very, very careful about what to stay away from. That includes over-the-counter items like Benadryl. And the generic name for Benadryl is diphenhydramine. And you want to stay away from that. It shows up in all kinds of cold medicine, cough medicine, all kinds, sleep medicine. Be very careful with sleep medications. They can really create havoc. And so learning about these medications to avoid is something important. I have at least 3 videos on the YouTube channel. That's my YouTube channel is Pat Snyder. It's just the name of it. If you go to just Google YouTube Pat Snyder Dementia, and that will take you to my channel because there are lots of Pat Snyders on YouTube. And look for medications to avoid. The last one that I did has multiple slides that have lots and lots of names of commonly given medicines, most of which are highly anticholinergic. And the reason you don't want an anticholinergic medication is that is fighting the good medicine that is helping your loved one. Because it involves the neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. And the medications that are good for your loved one are helping acetylcholine do its job in the brain. Anticholinergic medications are basically trying to get in the way or limit the impact of acetylcholine. And so that's why you need to be very careful about the anticholinergic medications. You're going to need to take them or have them be given sometimes for some symptoms. It's just needs to be managed probably at a low level. And if it doesn't work, then back away quickly and try something different. Okay, learning about the disease involves learning about triggers, and triggers are the things that create behavioral issues or problems, things that might make your loved one really nervous or anxious or agitated, or even really become very, very upset. And they could cause some real problems to themselves or others. So learning what triggers are there for your loved one is important. And it's going to be basically you being very perceptive, observing what is your loved one doing in response to what's in the room. And sometimes it can be what's happening, like little children running around and squealing and playing and tossing on the floor. That may be delightful to your loved one. That may be a trigger that causes them to become anxious. The lighting in the room, sounds in the room, sounds from outside, the tone in someone's voice, the look on your face, the body language that you use as you approach them, all kinds of things, using too many words, giving them too many choices. There are many, many triggers, and we talk about those kind of things in our class all the time. So if you're new here, you're going to learn more and more about that if you keep coming to class. So learning to avoid triggers is very, very important. It will make your journey so much easier if you can avoid those things in the first place. Then you don't have to try to fix it later. There are lots of non-drug interventions. We're going to be talking about those a little bit today, and we talk about them almost all the time in class. So let's look at some examples of things that you can do that don't involve drugs. Physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, these kinds of things, depending on your loved one's symptoms, can really help out. My husband took advantage, I think, of all 3 of these. Some people have their speech really impacted, especially with LBD. They can get a very soft voice. And one of the sweetest moments in John's journey, with LBD was when his speech therapist encouraged him to make up a story to tell one of our grandchildren, Nate, when Nate was a preschooler. And John decided that he was going to tell a story of when he was a newspaper delivery boy in Washington, D.C., and as a middle schooler. And so we wrote out a script for him. You know, I got him to tell, I helped him some. I said, tell me what happened, and kind of got him a script, an outline of what to say. He practiced it with the speech therapist. He practiced it with me. And then we didn't tell the family anything about it. And we were at my son and daughter-in-law's house, and there was little Nate. And I got all teary-eyed when John started in. They didn't know this was going to happen, but I did. And John said, "Hey, Nate, come over here. I want to tell you a story. And everybody perked up because that's not something John usually did. He was having problems initiating speech and doing anything like telling a story. And he proceeded to tell Nate that lovely little story about what that was like. Everybody was just mesmerized and thrilled. And it's one of my sweetest memories. So look into whether some of these things might be able to help your loved one if they're having problems with physical movement of any type. That can be physical or occupational therapy or speech, and take advantage of those. Excuse me. Aromatherapy was always a part of our house while John was dealing with Lewy body dementia. I had lavender going in little diffusers, always in his room and in other parts of the house, because that was a calming, and that was something, a scent that we enjoyed. There are various things other than lavender that you can use. Look it up online that you may prefer another one. But that's just something that's kind of quiet and in the background that can help keep things calm. John took advantage of massage therapy while we could still move around and get him out. And we both went to the massage therapist. It was wonderful for me with my back issues and helping me to relax. And also, John was using it for relaxation. He began to have a lot of muscle spasms and tension due to the Parkinsonism part of Lewy body dementia. And massage therapy became a big deal even when he had to stay home. He would light up whenever Vicky, our massage therapist, would come in. They developed just a sweet relationship. She saw him kind of as an older uncle. And he just loved it and always felt better. His legs and his feet felt so much better after getting that massage therapy. Here again, it was a calming thing, it was a soothing thing. Music was going in the background a lot at our house. Some of it was the spa type, relaxing background music. Some of it was John's favorite music. He loved classical music, and we had a lot of CDs, and I played those. I'd even get out the hymn book and sing. He'd love to hear me sing. And so I'd get out and sing hymns to him, get out the book and sing hymns to him. So music became just kind of a part um, of what we did as therapies. This one here at the bottom is a big deal. It goes on all the time, the redirection communication techniques. And we talk about these all the time in class. Redirection is like if things aren't if things aren't going quite the way they should in the conversation with your loved one, you redirect the conversation to something else. Kind of bring up another topic that's lighter, happier. You might need to leave the room and then come back in with a new topic if it's hard to break the rhythm of what's going on right then. And communication techniques are very, very broad spectrum of things that you can learn about there, how to approach someone, learning that their peripheral vision is very limited and becomes more limited as dementia advances. So you learn to approach them from the front, for example. You look directly in their face. You're very conscious of the expression on your own face, on your own body language, the tone in your voice, speaking more slowly, giving only two choices instead of three or four. Things like this are examples of communication techniques that you should be learning to address what you're dealing with right now. That's a little bit different from the way life used to be. Connecting with others and becoming an expert is really important. Joining a support group like this online or classes like this online, getting a local one. There are all kinds of groups that you can find now. I really do encourage you to look for groups also. Once you have a specific diagnosis of the type of dementia, you may want to have part of that be people who are dealing with the very same kind of dementia you are, because their stories and your stories you're going to help each other out with those stories. You're going to find more solutions those aha, oh, I hadn't thought about that moments that will help you. Reading all that you can, or watching things like my YouTube video channel. And there are multiple things out there on YouTube now. There are multiple things online, more support groups. There's more support, way more support than back in 2007 when John got his diagnosis. And so it's out there. Find out which ones work best for you, and I encourage you to connect with those others. And the more connected you become, the more supported you're going to feel, and the more of an expert you are going to become as well. Network with others in your community to build your team. And remember, like I said earlier, you are the coach of this team. We always say that dementia caregiving is not a solo sport, it is a team sport. And so building your team is going to make your job so much easier. And as the coach, you decide who gets to play. Who's going to be the doctor in this story? Who's going to be the primary doctor? Who's going to be the specialist? You may also want to consider if your loved one has multiple, what we call comorbidities, multiple other diseases that they're dealing with. You may want to trim some of those down if you can. The fewer specialists you have in the story, the less likely you're going to run into medication problems. Because I can remember Dr. Coffer teaching me that every specialist is kind of seeing within his or her own box. And so they're focusing in on their specialty, and they're not always taking into account that there's a brain disease going on here. The brain runs everything. So the brain disease has to take precedence. So you may need to trim some of that down a little bit and see if you can maintain medication support that may be vital. But every now and then you may actually trim some of those away as time goes on for quality of life reasons, because this is a fatal diagnosis. I call it, I let Louis drive the train. It drove the medication train. And if it wasn't going to work well with Louis, we weren't going to deal with that because John now had this. There was possibility for him to have a surgery. He had a hernia, a large hernia, right toward the, on his tummy. And the thought of, were we going to have surgery on that? Absolutely not. Was he going to have a colonoscopy? No. That was going to be much too stressful. So Louis was driving the train. And that way you are simplifying things, you're trimming out things that can bring extra stress into your story. Okay, different people who can be on your team, pharmacists, other medical professionals. One of the ways that I used a pharmacist was we lived in a small town, and Smith's Drugstore was owned by a wonderful gentleman who's a pharmacist, and he had a great team working with him. And I would sit down with him or one of the members of his team every so often and look at the medication list, see if there was anything that the pharmacist thought might be conflicting. Could any medicines be conflicting with one another? Did I need to ask the doctor to consider possibly another version, another sort of medication to treat a certain symptom? The pharmacist was a huge help for me in dealing with all the medications that John had to take and manage. At some point in our story, John, I was at the point where I just had to have more respite time. And so John started going to the adult daycare facility where we lived at that time in Western North Carolina. Wonderful people there. They usually have the certified nursing assistants, CNAs, who are the folks who work there. Some of those people eventually started working, kind of moonlighting at my house when John needed to have more personal care at home. And so I got to meet some people who eventually became a bigger part of our story. But in adult daycare, what they are doing is they are helping have socialization and activities and things for your loved one while you're taking a chance to go do something you either need to do or want to do. to just get a little time where it's just you, because you're going to have to refuel or you're going to run out of gas. And if you crash, they're going to crash with you. So adult daycare is something to seriously consider adding to your team. There are church groups, there are community volunteer groups in some communities who can help and take advantage of those, or individuals in your social circle or your church circle who, if they say, oh, is there any way I can help? I recommend that you have a list prepared ahead of time. And if someone opens their mouth and says, any way I can help, you whip that list out. Well, I really could use help with this particular thing. That would be great. If somebody could bring just once a month, if somebody could maybe bring us a dinner, that would be super. Or if somebody could take out my trash can for me because I have to go up the hill. A neighbor volunteered to do that at our house, and it just took that load off of me. Little things as well as big things. Could somebody give us a ride to fill in the blank? We got to go to the doctor's office. And it's hard to move John around. Can somebody ride with me to take him to the doctor's office so it's safe for him to get in and out of the car? Things like that. Have a list ready to go, and don't be bashful about asking for help. This is a team sport. You'll have your chance to give somebody else help later. I brought a handyman in, and he was key for me. He took care of things that needed fixing in the house. He volunteered to do my grass. Well, I paid him, but I mean, he added that, and it was wonderful. He took a huge load off my shoulders, and I do encourage you to get somebody like that to help you. If you're really, really way into caregiving, you're not going to have the energy to do everything you used to do. Okay, now we're going to shift to stress. We know that stress is the other enemy that we're going to talk about today, and it's one that can kill you. Stress definitely can be deadly. Caregivers die in fairly significant numbers before the person with dementia dies. And if you're dealing with Lewy body dementia, those numbers are even higher because of the nature of that particular kind of dementia. It's so volatile and changeable. And it has that behavioral piece to it. That's why we want to focus a lot on behavior management stuff. And we'll be dealing with that a lot next month, but also we're talking about it a little bit today. But stress really is something that we consider the key to effective caregiving. If you can control stress, you're going to have a more gentle journey. It's just going to be easier. Everything's going to be easier if you can get that stress level down. It works better when stress is minimized at your house. And so what I want you to do, and I'm going to be digging into some detail about that in a slide or two later, learning to sense the different kinds of ways stress can show up that you may not have thought about. And then learning how you can neutralize it, at least to some degree. The other part here that's important is when people who are close to you, your friends and family members, start to express concern. I'm getting worried about you. This happened to me. This is what my kids started telling me. Mom, we're getting more worried about you. We can't stop what's happening to Dad, but we're afraid we're going to lose you too. And so when that happens, you need to pay attention to that. And you may need to make some decisions at that point to change the way you're doing things. Don't blow that off. It's important. Once you kind of, yeah, I admit, yes, I really am at a level I really need to look at this. I hope you'll reflect on how to modify the things that you can and how to even reframe things that are happening, how to look at it in a different way so that it's still there, but it's not having the impact on you that it was having. Because your goal is a gentle journey, a more gentle journey, just as gentle as you can make it for your loved one, for yourself, for the rest of your family. That's what we're really after. So, first tip, The very first one, the umbrella tip overriding, is whenever you have a chance to choose between two ways to do something, always choose the lesser stressor. Always choose the lesser stressor unless you absolutely have no choice. Because choosing that lesser stressor is just going to bring the temperature down. It's going to make things a lot easier. The examples that I have given in the past about this, and I'm going to ask you for some as soon as I finish talking, are if you're going to have a big group over for a big event like Christmas dinner, Thanksgiving dinner, just a gathering or whatever, you don't do the work anymore. Let them bring the food. Let them clean up after. Maybe even don't even clean up the house before they come, or get somebody to help you do it or do it for you. At a minimum, set the table. But don't overdo. Don't do it the way you're used to doing it because you've got this added job now. So choose the lesser stressor and let other people carry more weight that maybe you were carrying in the past. Another example medically was when John fell and tore his ear. And he fell against a piece of furniture, didn't hit his head hard, but he caught his ear up here at the top, and it started to bleed. And I had two paid caregivers there, and they immediately said, "Oh, you need to take him to the ER. He fell." I was well into the journey at that point. I had fully embraced choose a lesser stressor at that point. And I said, "You know what? I'm thinking this is cartilage. And I think I'm going to just see if I can take care of this without going to the ER." So they agreed to stay with John. I ran over. It was a Sunday. It always happens on weekends and holidays and Sundays, doesn't it? When the doctor's not available. And so I just ran over to Walmart pharmacy because my little private pharmacy was not available, and found out what I should use to put on as an ointment to keep it from germs from spreading, and how to bandage something at that place of your body on the ear. And he gave me what I needed, and off I went, came home, cleaned John up, patched him up, went to the doctor Monday morning, and she said, "Pat, you did exactly what you should have done. He didn't need to go to the ER for this." So I chose the lesser stressor, and I got a pat on the back from the doctor. So that was very much an encouragement that, yeah, that was the right choice. But the two caregivers who were in the room were going to rush to the ER. We have a tendency as dementia caregivers to run to the ER really fast. Folks, that can be one of the most dangerous places on earth for a dementia patient, especially Lewy body dementia, because of all the problems with medications. You have to be extremely careful. These are powerful medications, and when a doctor in an ER decides, "I'm going to take this one away and give him this one because I think this one's better," he just created chaos, because you should never do two things at once with a dementia patient, ever. You don't take one away and give one at the same time. You give the brain a chance to cope with the change. And so stay away from the ER if you possibly can. It's a very stressful place, and bad things can happen really fast in terms of medications there. So if you don't have to go, don't go. Choose the lesser stressor. Figure out how to manage it at home, then get to the doctor's office as soon as you can after that. Okay, this is the big slide here that I want to be sure everybody just takes a minute to soak in. Set your internal radar to sense stress in its many forms. Now, this is a very incomplete list, but these are examples of different things that you might not have thought of before as being a stressor for you as a caregiver. Hurt, fear, worry, guilt, regret, exhaustion. I'm sure you've thought of that one already. Frustration. And then down at the bottom is anger, and it's in bold print. And it's in bold print because every single one of those that aren't in bold print can actually be the source of anger. And what can happen is that you find yourself so stressed and you're so angry that the anger is dominating everything. It's a filter through which you're seeing everything and feeling everything. And what that's doing is masking the real problem. And what I'm sharing with you now, my counselor taught me. And John and I were in counseling together for years. And when he could no longer go, I continued all the way through John's passing away until I left that community. I continued to see him because every single part of the journey he helped me with tremendously. And he taught me this. So I'm teaching you what he taught me. And that is that if you can use some common sense techniques, you can lessen the power of these feelings. You can certainly lessen anger, because that's what's going to present a lot of times as a caregiver, just by getting in touch with what is the feeling behind my anger and naming it out loud. And I'd never considered that before. Just figuring it out and then saying it out loud. And one way this played out for me was, I'm going to give you an example. My son, I would call my son John David. He's a wonderful, brilliant kid. I mean, he really is smart, even though he's mine. Good problem solver. And I was like, I just need his problem solving skills. So I'd call him and I'd try to tell him about what was going on with his dad. And he would just say, Mom, I just can't. I can't hear all these details. Mom, you're just going to have to give me a short version. I can't hear all this. And I would hang up. I would feel very not listened to. And when I would go through that, I learned how to move from hanging up that phone and saying, he won't listen to me. I'm just so angry. Why won't he listen to me? And I was able to move to, he won't listen to me. I'm feeling angry, to digging into the deeper feeling that expressed itself. And I could say, I feel hurt. I feel frustrated. And by labeling that feeling underneath the anger lost a lot of its grip on me. And the weight of the frustration, the weight of the hurt lightened. It lessened. The counselor was right. I don't think I would have figured that out on my own without his help. I was able to step back. I was able to connect with my son better. I started sharing shorter, less detailed versions of things with him. And I realized he was processing his grief over losing his dad to dementia. John David was processing in that way, and he just couldn't handle some things. But I had to get past the anger to get there. And so I'm excited to be able to share that kind of thing with you, because it was great wisdom from a very good counselor that basically made our journey so much easier, so much lighter. Another simple technique that I used after identifying and labeling that underlying feeling that presented as anger and naming it out loud was the two other things on this slide. And this again with the counselor. I would come in and I would be talking really fast and maybe a little bit loud, but definitely fast. And he would say, Pat, I want you to stop for just a minute. You seem really stressed. I want you to take some deep breaths and then just speak a little more softly and a little more slowly. That really helped. I used exiting the room when John would act out or say something, make some, Louis, it was really Louis talking, not John, but something would come out of his mouth that was not nice or kind. And I would make a quick excuse and exit the room and just take 3 long, deep breaths. And I could feel my body relaxing. And when I went back into the room, I would speak more slowly. I would speak softly. I'd have a smile on my face. I might say, "Hey, would you like some ice cream?" Or "I brought you a cookie." Or "You want to go for a walk?" I would reset. He was allowed to reset while I was out of the room and I was resetting. And I used these techniques that the counselor taught me about taking the deep breaths and speaking more softly and slowly. So these kinds of things are just simple little things that can help you. Let's see if we can come up with some more. You're going to come up with more before the class is over. I hope you're going to share some. Staying in the moment. Oh, this was an important thing that the counselor taught. And these were basically his words. Focus on the here and now. If you can stay in the moment, you're going to find that your stress level drops significantly because the past exists only in your mind. It's gone. It's not real. It's over. The future events that you are imagining might happen are very likely never to occur as you think they're going to occur. They're not real. The only thing that's real, he would say to me over and over again over the years, the only thing that's real is right now for any of us at any time. That's the only thing that's real. And almost always now is doable. Almost always now is doable. That's really true if you think about it. We can usually in the moment figure out something to do that will make things better, especially if we're practicing some of these other techniques that I've talked about a little earlier. So I hope you're going to remember to stay in the moment. Past isn't real. Future's not real. Probably won't happen that way. You do that what ifing, and it's probably not going to happen like that. But now is, and now is doable. Simple stuff. It really does work. If you can simplify your schedule and learn that magic word, no, learn to say no. I'm not going to be chairman of the so-and-so committee this year. I'm not going to teach that Sunday school class unless it brings me great satisfaction and joy to do it. Now, if it does that, then you should do it. That should be a part of what you do. So it's going to be different for everybody. But learning how to trim out those things that you've always done and you assume everybody expects you to do for a season of time, you got to say no and simplify your schedule. Simplifying your schedule is going to make your life easier, softer, gentler. It's going to be a more loving place for you and for your loved one. I do encourage you to get counseling yourself to learn more of these stress reduction techniques that Dr. Terry Ledford taught to me years ago. And I'm still teaching to others because they were so impactful in my life. Another thing you can do is to pray or meditate. Some of you may want to do yoga. If you can get yourself centered and kind of beyond yourself, get the clutter of other things that are going on out of the way and focus in. For those of you who are believers, remember the devotion that I shared this morning. He's always there. He's eager to help. He wants to be a part of your life. Welcome him in, invite him in, ask him for help. You may be amazed. Ask for the eyes to see it when it happens, and you may be amazed at how often God is showing up in your story and making things easier. Something else you can do is to eliminate negative people. They are going to drain you. I'm not talking about cutting people permanently out of your life, but for this season, if you can reduce the amount of time that you are spending with people who drain you, who are always looking at the glass half empty, who are looking at every bad thing that could happen, might happen, certainly will happen as far as they're concerned. You don't need that right now. You need some positivity in your life. You need to have people who are encouragers, people who have been there, done that, and they're still happy and living life. Lynette and I have been through this journey. We're still living life. We have a lot of happy moments. Do we still have challenges? You bet we do. Have we been caregiving again? You bet. I'm in it right now. Lynette just finished up with her dad and is still supporting her mom. So, I mean, there's always going to be stuff to do, but you don't want to have people who are dwelling on the negative. They're going to drain you. So try to reduce the amount of time you are and focus that you have with those people. Remember to prioritize and choose what is important over what is urgent whenever possible. You don't have to answer the telephone every time it rings. You don't have to answer the doorbell every time it rings. As a matter of fact, I recommend you not answer the doorbell very often unless you know your neighbor or best friend or sweet daughter's on the way, because it may be somebody you don't want to talk to. So remember to choose the important stuff. If you're sitting and having a cup of coffee and a good conversation with your loved one who has dementia, that's important. Stay in that moment. You can always call that person back later, unless it's a telephone call you knew you were going to get from the doctor and you got to take it right now. Most of the time, it can wait. So focus in on those good times and don't let them be interrupted by something that kind of feels urgent, but really isn't very important. And please laugh every chance you get. Have people in your life who bring you laughter and joy. You may want to watch an old TV show. You may want to listen to somebody who's a good comedian. Just watch an old movie that you know just made you feel good and laugh and smile. It's a powerful antidote to stress. So take advantage of laughter every single chance you get and make time for yourself a priority. This is hard for us to do. And I know caregivers, one this morning said, you know what? She can't stand it when I'm out of the house. I have to be careful. But he said, you know what? I've started getting out and doing exercise. I've started getting out and doing it 3 times a week. And boy, do I feel better. There you go. When you take some of that time for yourself and make it a priority, you're going to feel better. You're going to be a better caregiver, and your loved one's going to have a better experience. So that's not selfish to make time for yourself. It's kind and it's very important. It's vital. So please don't neglect doing that. Now, how can you do that? There are lots of different ways, but here are just a few to look at. Exercise, the example that I just gave. It might be riskier to not do this than to do it. You want to be able to stay fit, and sometimes exercise might be a 5-minute walk outside. That may be all you can squeeze in because of things that are going on, but grab it every chance you get. If you can simplify the way you pay your bills, the way you fill your prescriptions, there are programs called Sync My Med, Simplify My Med, names like that at different pharmacies, where you can get all your medications, and the pharmacist will coordinate it with your doctors, and they'll coordinate it with your insurance. They'll take care of all those details for you, and you go once a month and get what you need once a month at the pharmacy or have it sent to you. Things that will simplify your life, paying your bills once a month, can make a big difference so that you're not frantically going from one thing to another thing. And you have this list, this to-do list that is full of all kinds of details. As many of those as you can consolidate, try to do that. And then either pay for things or ask for help with those things that you should not be doing. Try not to clean out the leaves in your gutter like caregiver Jane was doing, and she had diabetes and had already had one toe removed, and she's up on a ladder cleaning out leaves in the gutter. I drove by and saw her doing that. I'm like, what is she thinking? It would have cost her $20 to get that done in her community back then when that happened. Some people are just going to try to keep on keeping on the way they always have, and they can easily crash and burn. So if you can possibly get help doing things, don't be bashful about asking for it. If you can afford to pay for things, please do that. And so that's the end of my presentation. I know there are many, many other things that you guys can share, but I'm going to open this thing back up. Let me turn off the recording at this point. All righty.